So, show of hands in the room. How many of you have tried online dating? Come on, get them up. I can kind of see you. I'm imagining most of you have tried online dating, and it's exciting at first, right? You match with a cute guy, and you check out his profile, and there's no red flags that he's a psychopath or the Craigslist killer, so that's a positive. So you decide to go for it, right? Maybe if you just give him your phone number, because maybe the off chance you'll actually meet offline. Everything seems to be going really well, and the next thing you know, you're driving down the interstate thinking about your newly found love interest, listening to love ballads on replay. Other people do that, right? And you think, wow, this could be it. This could be my person. Like, the search is finally over. Like, I can see, like, a white picket fence and 2.5 kids kind of search is over, right? And then it happens. You get a text message. You look down at it just to see it's from your guy. And you open it up to see a beautiful picture of him smiling back at you, wearing nothing but a smile. It's all fun and games till they send you a picture of themselves in their birthday suit. Welcome to online dating. 49 million singles have dabbled in online dating, so it's no surprise it's a $1.8 billion a year industry and growing. I mean, now we can shop for a potential mate as easily as a pair of designer shoes. You need a date for tonight? So do about 1 billion other people, and they're all on dating apps. Everywhere you look, you see another one. You've got Zeus, Plenty of Fish, Bumble, Hinder, eHarmony, Match.com, Whoosy, Whatsy, I mean, they're everywhere. These apps are a direct result of a cultural shift where dating is becoming more of a casual activity, and FOMO, fear of missing out, is running rampant. Netflix and chill is becoming the new dinner and a movie, rather. And things like pocketing and cookie jarring and Caspering are like the latest dating trends we have to be made aware of. I mean, do we even know, what are those? What are those things? Ladies and gentlemen, gone are the days of traditional courtship, romance, and commitment. Welcome to Hookup Culture. We have new models now, so say hello to a culture of free choice, personal fulfillment, and an anything-goes approach. Interestingly enough, the divorce rate in the US and Canada is at an all-time alarming high of 52%, and I suspect rising. And less young people are choosing to marry early, if at all. A Gallup poll conducted in June of 2015 looked at the number of married US adults between the ages of 18 and 29. They found that there was a decrease from 30 to 15% over the last decade. So I ask you, why do men and women say that today it's harder now than ever before to date? Well, I believe the answer to that is simple. This abundant digital age that we live in is actually enabling hookup culture, which by its very name we know is completely void of intimacy, the intimacy only found in deep connection with others. When I was a little girl, I got into a fight with my mother over something so monumental that to this very moment I have no recollection of what it was about, but clearly it was important. And I remember I did not speak to her for 3 solid days. Not for lack of her trying. And on the 3rd day, she took me by the hand, walked me into the kitchen, and sat me down, looked me in the eye, and gave me a piece of advice that would shift my perspective on relationships forever. She said, Erin Elizabeth, now you know when the mom uses the middle name, like they are not messing around. She said the cruelest thing that you can ever do to another human being is to ignore them. Conversely, the greatest kindness you can ever give to another human being is to be present and to show up in your relationships, regardless of the emotions you're feeling. I share this with you because today, it's never been easier to connect with somebody. Conversely, it's never been easier to disconnect from somebody. When Mother said that people can be cruel, she wasn't kidding. Empathy, vulnerability, compassion, the 3 single most important ingredients found in connection, are not being exercised regularly in our relationships. Thanks to the likes of Tinder, we are judging people so quickly that we are simply glancing at a cover of a book without ever reading what's written inside the pages. Meaningless relationships and cheap thrills are becoming our new norm, and things like romance and dating, they're becoming extinct. Can you imagine 2 generations from now, your grandchildren looking up at you and saying, "How did you and Grandpa meet?" And your response saying, "Well, it involved Tinder, a one-night stand, and an unplanned pregnancy." A far cry from the likes of The Notebook. But that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed. People are becoming more jaded, cynical, closed-hearted, and simply unwilling to put in the effort to cultivate these deep and lasting relationships. Because let's face it, today, the risk is not worth the reward. So, what I do know is that if we don't show up in our relationships, we will become emotionally invisible. And if we become emotionally invisible, we will definitely breed an emotionally invisible society. It is estimated that over 210 million people suffer from internet and social media addictions worldwide. So it's no surprise that they compare the feeling of meeting somebody online with the feeling of experimenting with drugs for the first time. People are actually addicted to that high, that next hit of dopamine when finding love online. But the crash is usually always impending because people aren't allowing themselves to be authentic. And how can they be? We showcase our entire lives via Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, myself included, right? But people are afraid. They're afraid to be authentic because of fear of condemnation. I mean, I only post about the good stuff. My life's all sunshine and roses, right? I don't talk about the sheer terror I felt when I lost my last business venture unexpectedly, or the fact that I have extreme mom guilt because my son is growing up in an environment without his father. I certainly don't talk about my constant body image issues and the daily battle I have with my scale. But that's me. Those are my truths, and I hide them. When you think about things like this, it makes the hookup seem like a really attractive option because there's safety and anonymity. It does not bode well for a process that requires radical authenticity. I want to share with you a story from a memoir that I came across while I was preparing for my talk, which seemed to scream relevancy to me. It all started when a mutual friend played matchmaker, sliding the number of a young girl studying voice at the University of Boston across the table and into the hands of an eager young man who's getting his PhD at the Boston School of Theology. The eager young man immediately called her and asked her if he could meet her in person. She accepted, reluctantly, and said he could take her for lunch. Her first impression of him over the phone was that he was the prim and proper, black-suited and boring type. But on a cold Thursday in January, the young man showed up in his green Chevy. It wasn't love at first sight. Much as she had anticipated, he was not that impressive. He was quite short. He looked quite young, and he was indeed the black-suited and boring type. But something happened. Not long into their date, her view of him changed completely. She realized that he wasn't anything other than a man of substance. And the longer he spoke, the taller he grew in stature and the more mature he became in her eyes. This is the love story between Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Loretta Scott King, the founders of a well-documented legacy of using nonviolence to effect legislative change. legacy of activism, social reform, and civil rights, work that continues today. A legacy that began in 1952 between a man and a woman who chose to be emotionally visible to one another. Dr. Brené Brown, a brilliant researcher out of the University of Houston, focuses her work around vulnerability and the implications to us as people if we desensitize ourselves towards it. She states that staying vulnerable is a risk we have to take if we want to experience deep human connection. That we must allow ourselves to be seen and have the power to be imperfect. That by dodging vulnerability, we not only cheat ourselves of intimacy, but also of making relationships work. It is the birthplace of creativity, of love, and of joy. But how do we move an entire culture that is saturated in this casualness towards sex and relationship, towards that of emotional visibility and connection? The post-millennial Gen Zers, people born between 1997 and 2016, they're a beautiful culture and generation. And not just because my son is part of this generation. This generation has been characterized by multiple researchers as being kind. They're the first generation that is totally accepting of gender equality, race, color, religion. They're politically neutral. There's the closest we have come as a society that actually embraces and celebrates individual uniqueness and differences. How incredible a thought is that, knowing that future generations will grow up in a world where they're more likely to be accepted than rejected by their human brothers and sisters. And this generation, Generation Z, they're forming their view on love and relationships right this minute. The frightening fact is that current social trends are potentially creating the first generation in history that has absolutely no idea how to court a potential mate, let alone find the language to do so intimately. Journalist Sabrina Weil asserts that this hookup culture is creating such a casual attitude around sex that teens today are actually facing an intimacy crisis that will undoubtedly follow them into adulthood. Further studies even show that there are psychological issues associated with multiple hookups. A recent study done by psychologist Seth Schwartz in Psychology Today shows the direct correlation between multiple hookups and psychological effects, such as increased levels of depression, anxiety, and decreased levels of self-esteem, happiness, and self-worth. On another note, according to CNN, the impact of social media and technology on youth today is immeasurable. By the time American children reach the age of 5, more than 50% regularly interact with a tablet or a device. And by middle school, teens are spending more time with social media than with parents or with teachers, upwards of 6 hours a day. But technology's not going to slow down, nor should it. Young people today have unlimited knowledge at their fingertips, and that's a great thing. I wish I had that growing up. I would have gladly traded in my county library's card catalog and the Dewey Decimal System for a piece of that action, right? But what they don't have is a clear picture of what authentic intimacy should look like, let alone the tools, the skills, or the language to navigate and to discuss complex and often sexually stigmatized issues. We need to implement a lot more education. We need to teach them about emotional literacy, communication, boundaries, and we also need to implement a media literacy approach to pornography, which sadly serves as the #1 contributor to our children's sexual education today. I imagine Being a young person today is extremely exciting, but also very scary and confusing. Decades of slow cultural change, from gay rights to gender equality, and a booming internet age seemingly peaking right in front of you. You've got things like the Me Too movement, non-binary gender awareness, political debates over bathrooms, easy access pornography, all right there. Just as you're starting to get your first crush and pass math class. But you're expected to understand everything that's going on and navigate successfully. That's quite a heavy burden to place on such small shoulders without a guide. When I was packing for my trip 2 days ago, my brilliant boy, who's 4, going on 18, said to me, "Mama, where are you going?" I said, "Well, buddy," his name is Kingston. "Mommy's going to Canada to do a presentation." He says, "Oh, you're going to work." I said, "Okay, sure, Mommy's going to work." I said, "Kingston, do you know why adults go to work?" He looks at me, hands on hips, and says, "Duh, Mom. They go to work so they can learn stuff to teach children." From the mouths of babes, right? I was driving the other day listening to The Greatest Love of All by the late, great Whitney Houston. And the line, "I believe children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way." It hit me like a ton of bricks. Because isn't that what it's all about? What kind of legacy are we going to leave? Do we live passionately? Do we love fully? Do we lead by example? Do we make an impact? So here's my challenge to you today. We need to defy the current social climate of hookups and emotional invisibility and forge new models. Models which demonstrate what pure, authentic intimacy looks like. If we don't, we must be willing to understand that we are facing the ever-present reality of becoming an emotionally bankrupt society where future generations, they're never going to experience romance, courtship, or the pure joy and belonging only found in deep connection with others. We need to exercise our emotional muscles and show up in our relationships, both online and off. We need to be empathetic and make others feel understood. We need to listen actively, ask questions, take responsibility for our behaviors, and most importantly, be compassionate and treat others with compassion. People today are starving for intimacy. I see it every day. But at some point, we have to realize that we can't blame society because you and we are society. So we have to take action. If we want to change the current model, a model which isn't working for anybody, we have to take action. In the words of Rabbi Hillel over 2 millennia ago, if not you, who? And if not now, when? When it comes to our legacy, we cannot afford to wait for when. Will you rise to the challenge?